one of the things about, let's talk about what things we're doing in the spring here now. And one of the things we do in the spring is we row out our seedlings. And I want to show you a little bit just what trouble you can get into.
Oh,
there's a pot of seedlings.
That's this year. That's
yes.
Yes.
And then these are planted a little less densely. Now you want them to get, those are planted way too densely, but I have that particular parent produces a lot of seed. So one of the things you want to do, these are seed that I planted out about the end of February, beginning of March, and they started germinating maybe about 3 or 4 weeks ago. And you want to wait till they get about 3 or 4 sets of true leaves before you row them out. And you'll see over in the bed over here where I rowed out the ones from last year, so you can kind of get an idea of the spacing. I do them about 1 inch apart and about 4 inches between the rows. And that's pretty tight, but it allows you to get them to a point where they're big enough that you can tell whether it's going to be a good one or not. And beyond that, you'll be able to you'll pull out the bad ones and the good ones.
I'm speechless.
I know.
4 inches apart and
4 inches apart rows, and then just 1 inch apart. The individual seedling 1 inch apart in that row, and that works pretty well. Now I should tell you what happens in the fall before. What I do is to take the seed heads from the fall before, just before they start to break open, and I put them in a bag like this, and I just let them dry down in a cool, dark place, and just let them sit in the bag all winter long, doing their thing. And then in the springtime, I take the bag and I go, not quite so bad as that.
And on the bag you have written the parent.
Right, on the bag I have the parent, or parents, if I have done a cross. And then I'll, in a very still room, you do not want to do this outdoors, on a big sheet of white paper, I kind of just sift it out onto the white paper, and then I collect that seed, and I put it in what I call our glassine envelopes. They're used by stamp collectors. They're very sheer, and the seed tends not to stick to them. And so I put those glassine envelopes with the label of what the cross is in another envelope that's bigger, so the glassine envelope breaks, I don't have a disaster. And then I put that in the crisper of my refrigerator and let it sit there for about 2 months before I put them outdoors. And then when I put them outdoors, I take potting mix, this regular potting mix, get good and wet, and I press it down fairly hard. And then I take that packet of seed from the glassine envelope and I sprinkle it as gently as possible across the surface. And sometimes you want to do, I should have done 2 pots of that one particular one there where they're just so crowded. But generally 1 pot will get you a fairly good coverage of seedlings. I put that outdoors. The labels I use are from Pawpaw Everlast Label Company. And I find they're wonderful. They label the pots well, and if you write on them with number 2 pencil, they seem to be almost impervious to everything here. Other labels I found have not worked as well, even some of the ones I paid the high bucks for, so I'm back to the number 2 pencil. And I think it works great. They're also kind of unobtrusive. When you row out that row, it doesn't look like you have this big flag saying, oh, I've got a cross of so-and-so by so-and-so. It's just and the label's bigger than the seedlings. I kind of like to have things more in proportion, and I kind of write all the information. I also have, when I take these things and plant them, I keep a stud book where it's a bound volume where I keep a record of all the crosses and when I planted them. And so they're given a cross number, like this year is the C crosses, so C59 is the 59th cross of the C year here in Oregon. And that way you can label the seedlings subsequently. So everything from the C59 cross would be labeled C59-1 for the first one I selected, or 2 for the second one I selected out of their class.
Oh, out of the seedlings.
Right, so let's say that was C59, and I picked one that was really good out of there. That would be 59-1.
Got it.
And then I write in my notebook also, good red violet, or whatever, some brief description to let me know what was going on. And I'm also on the tag. I now write a tag after I've selected that seedling out, C59-1. Also write on the tag, good red violet. Because sometimes things get switches around. The chipmunks go into the bed and decide, oh, what fun, tags,
Little swords.
That's right. This is also a good time to look around your planting, because the rosettes that are going to bloom in the summer right now are telling you something. Generally, they're bigger rosettes than everybody else in the clump. They have stopped making increases, and they tend to have a little bit different color, generally a brighter color than the rosettes in the clump that will not flower that year.
So it's their swan song.
That's right, their little swan song, they're telling you we're going to flower. So I tend to take a walk around the yard and mark and say, oh, so-and-so is going to flower, and I make a list of all of those. And so when I'm sitting around watching the television at night, I have the list in front of me. I said, ooh, it would be kind of cool to cross this one with this one. And so I kind of have in my mind for the crossing season what will be a blooming and what might be some cool combinations that I could make. Wouldn't it be cool to make something like lipstick, but now with a cobweb or whatever, and so you have all these little mind games of create. You kind of have to be, this is where the art part comes in the crossing game.
So I have a question for you, Kevin.
Yes.
The receiving plant, are they going to be more dominant genetically?
No, generally it's you get a little bit of effect for size. If you use the bigger parent in a cross as the pod parent, it'll tend to give a little bit bigger seedlings. But even then, it's more. Both parents contribute fairly equally to the progeny.
Okay.
When you say that the plant doesn't increase anymore, that rosette doesn't increase anymore, do you mean send up chicks?
Right,
Yeah.
that's right. Yeah, they're called monocarpic.
Okay.
So once they flower, that's the end of them.
No, but you said that in terms of looking for it in the spring, the one that might bloom, that it's not going to increase anymore.
Correct.
Okay.
Although you get rare ones, I had a plant of lipstick out front that it produced offsets and bloomed, and then whatever triggers flowering, the offsets off that one plant also flowered.
We had that
Yeah,
happen
that's
last
how
year.
that happened too.
Yeah, so there's some triggering moment that takes this process. And if they're disturbed too, I find that's the other thing. That's the other thing that, like these ones from England, I actually had them, even though they sat in customs for 3 weeks and they were only this big around, they still went ahead and bloomed to come from them.
Right.
So sometimes you can stress things into blooming. It's sensing it's the end of the road, and I better make seed.
When you do this controlled process, when the flower stalk comes out, do you put like a gauze bag over it to make no bees come?
I use just bags.
Just paper bags?
It's paper bag because when it doesn't rain in the summer here when they're blooming, and so we don't have. I could just put paper bag, and I usually put it like a rubber band at the bottom.
So you know the pollen and stuff.
That's right. Yeah. So it's very simple here. In New England, we have these muslin bags and cages, and it was a nightmare.
And then you pollinate it, and then you put the bag back on.
Correct. Yes. For 2 days at least.